Hello and welcome to Around the Lens. Let me start that again. Hello and welcome to Around the Lens, episode 83. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Around the Lens is a live weekly visual journalism roundtable show that myself and Zach Roberts do almost every week together at the same time, except for the times that Zach isn't on the show.
Is that my lead-in? Really? That's how you're going to start leading me in? Except when Zach doesn't do the show. Here's my co-host. I don't hear that on the Bob and Mark show or, any most other shows. Be like, anyway, my bit is to do the social media thing. So I will tell you when I'm here. If you want to learn more about us, head on over to aroundthelens.com. If you want to follow us on Facebook, it's AtL Podcast. On Instagram, it's Around the Lens. And on Twitter, it's A Round Lens.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I got used to saying, and I do the show with almost every week, and I would just, anyways. So I'm gonna drop that, Zach, from now on. And my co-host, Zach Roberts. I don't know where Ron Hamilton is tonight. Usually he's popping in on the show, second co-host. But
driving down the road somewhere with his windows open, something like that.
Yeah, he's just doing something in Hawaii right now, probably. Getting himself into trouble. So let us get to know our panelists this week. Panelists, let's start with, tell us a little about yourself, and then we'll go on from there.
Okay, well, I'm Carl Johnson. You can find me at arclight-ak.com. I'm an Anchorage-based nature photographer, and that means just about anything outside in the wild, from landscapes and wildlife to cultures.
All right. Craig?
Morning. Craig Stampfli, based in Brisbane, Australia. Freelance photographer. Do a little bit of everything at the moment. Enjoy my landscapes and portraits, and just starting to dip my toe into weddings.
All right. Good. Which toe are you dipping in?
Right pinky.
Nice.
It's a very, very tiny amount.
Just taking it easy.
Okay, great. Our other panelist, Steven, please tell us about yourself.
How you doing? I'm Stephen White, freelance photographer here in New York City, and also public affairs for the Coast Guard.
Okay, great, which will roll in very well when we talk about documenting on a boat, shooting on a boat. That is our key topic this evening. But we have other things to talk about. As I mentioned before, we talk about news and gear as well on the show. That comes at you every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. So let's just, without wasting any more time, let's get started. Our first topic this evening is all about the news, and we're talking about AI and how it's taken our Jerbs. Specifically, Google has trained its AI to pull landscape shots out of the 360 photos that it takes for its Google Maps application. So, whenever you're kind of scanning through city streets or wherever, and you have that car that shot, all the 360 shots, it's actually to find the most optimal sort of landscape regular shot in that 360 sphere, and it's publishing these photos. So the photos are actually pretty decent from what other people have said, and I think they're okay. So I want to kind of talk about you all with this. Do you think this is something that, we as visual journalists need to worry about, AI? I mean, obviously, nobody's going to go out, to a scene, so to speak. You still need to go to a location. I'm not talking about robots necessarily coming in and shooting photographs, but just in general, what do you think about sort of the advancement of AI being able to determine what is a good shot? Let's start with you, Carl, since obviously scenery is something that I think you put a lot of pride in your body of work.
Well, I was thinking about this earlier, and it got me thinking of Star Trek: The Next Generation and how Data wanted to really be he wanted to be a real boy. And as try as he might, he never really could. And I quite frankly, that's what I think of when I see these landscape photos and having AI determine what it thinks is a landscape photo. They're starting with a bad quality product. These 360 views are shot in, a lot of them are midday light, which is the best light for them. And they are not appealing from a lighting perspective, from a composition perspective. So they're taking crappy photos and making them better using, tweaks in photo processing. But, you know, if you start with a crappy photo in camera, you're going to end up with a less crappy photo, but still a crappy photo, no matter what you can do to it in processing. So I really think that what this is really more speaks to kind of the disintegration of the photo stock market, and how these photos will be seen as kind of a substitute for the bottom end of the feeding pool, which is micro stock, and these are even subpar below those. And now this will be just an even cheaper way for companies or whomever who need to have really cheap stock photos. They don't really care much beyond just something that's documenting. And that's really what I think this is more of a disintegration of than so much that's infringing on real landscape photographers' work.
So the ones who are going for the, like, people just need a decent quality landscape photo. The quality, or, you know, they don't need like super high fidelity. They just need something to use to tell a story.
Yeah, and you see these a lot in these blog posts that show up all over the place. You know, top 10 places to do this, top 5 places to do that, 4 worst places to do this. And they don't ever really use good photos. They don't need good photos because the point of the article is not the photography, and they just need the photo in there as kind of a filler, essentially. So this is really geared towards that. But, you know, I really don't see quality publications, quality calendars, quality anything looking to these images as a substitute or a replacement for good, high quality landscape photos that are taken at the right time of day, that have careful thought and preparation in lens choice and perspective and composition and all those other things that make good landscape photos.
Right. But I'll counter that, and I say you're going to start to see that in those publications start to creep up, because the cost savings that you're going to find that they're like, well, I can just take this little photo and put it for this one article, or this photo and put it for this little article. And especially with the consumer side, like you were saying, for the blogs, that's going to be become where it's going to be making the big difference, and you're going to start to see it a lot more for these individual bloggers who take those photos and just use it as filler. That's where you're really going to see it. But like you were saying, Craig, you're really good shot, you're really good photographers. You're not going to find those. It's a yay for your personal bloggers, but for someone like you who are doing these shots out every day, there's no comparison.
What I can see here is, like, you know, first of all, I think the photographs aren't bad. I think, you know, they're shot with whatever camera they shot with to get the resolution they needed. I mean, they're not, like, again, they're not good quality shots, at least at high resolution. You're not going to use these, but yeah, for, like, depending on how much it costs to license, you know, whether it's free or cheap, I mean, it's passable. But I see this being something that could potentially be taken into, you know, perhaps a setting that, like a scene or an event, you know, perhaps, you know, like Zach, you always talk about how, or, you know, you've talked about in the past how you've seen people take their 360 cameras to protest shoots. You know, imagine where you have a 360 camera at an event and the AI is then just choosing photos from that 360 scene to publish. You know, I mean, that could be something in the future.
Well, I mean, so this is already happening. I mean, this is actually kind of a long story when it comes to at least breaking news. If you watch local news, at least in either New York, or I've seen it even in Syracuse, they're using, whether it be Google Earth, to tell you where a scene happened. Like, literally it says Google Earth on it. It's not even like them pretending, you know, that it's something else, or some, you know, After Effect graphic. It's literally Google Earth, which you can get for free now. Yeah. And, you know, places like DNA Info, Gothamist, obviously now because they are owned by the same people to a much lesser extent, but a lot of like local news places, what they'll do is if, oh, there was a break-in at, you know, 123 Main Street. So what they'll do is they'll go to Google Street View, 123 Main Street, screenshot, or embed, I don't know technically how they legally can do it, and put it as their story, and that's where it happened. And it literally will say credit Google Maps or something like that at the bottom. So I mean, this is kind of happening already, which is for a lot of the kind of just to add an image, because now, thanks to social media, you can't just do a text story anymore, or just where it has no image. So you need some sort of image. So I'm not quite sure how much any of this is going to affect anything, because I mean, I know that DNA. Look, first off, I've tried to work for DNA Info before, and I've heard what their rates are, and it's not worth leaving the house as a photographer. It's not. You're not going to break even if you have to take the subway there, especially the state the subway is right now. What the problem? I mean, if this spreads to a larger issue, maybe it'll be an issue. I mean, I just got my quarterly report from my wire service, and they sold a bunch of photos of mine from campaign stops with Trump and stuff like that for 29 cents, as in total 29 cents, like an entire image that went to CBS News or AP for 29 cents. My cut was half of that. So
drinks
I'm
on
not
you.
put it all in one place.
I'm not quite sure how that money works out, because I mean, obviously some of the photos are $18, it's like a whole range. So it's probably part of some sort of subscription-based thing for like larger websites. So, the cost for news sites for photography isn't there. I think that what this comes down to mostly is pure laziness and not having photo editors at sites, where they just don't care. And again, I see it mostly used for stories of crime beat stuff, where it's just like, this robbery happened here. There's no need for a photograph. I mean, even as a photojournalist, yeah, I don't know what I would photograph if they told me, oh, go to that shop and photograph a crime that happened 12 hours ago, like a holdup. There's just nothing really to do. So I mean, I'm not that worried. What's that?
Crime scene tape. You can't get that on a Google View.
Well, if it's just
actually,
maybe in Anchorage.
you can.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, especially you're gonna stroll through the streets of New York on Google Street.
But not
I mean,
guaranteed for that property.
I mean, in New York, I mean, if you have a mugging or something like that happened in a general area, you're not going to have crime tape. You'll luckily if you have a police report. I mean, or if there'll be a police report, but luckily if the police actually file it. I don't see this causing a lot of problem. I mean, until of course, but like, is someone buying prints of these? Is Google selling? Is that even are they taking? I don't know what the quality of the Google 360 cameras are. So at a point when they become, huge gigabyte photos, when they become DSLR quality, maybe that's an issue. But I mean, Carl probably can answer this better than me, but I feel like when you buy landscape photography, you're almost buying the photographer more than you're buying the photo itself. Like, I mean, you can find really amazing photos of landscapes on Flickr for free already, and you have been able to for years. And you probably can get prints of them pretty cheaply. I mean, you go to any fair and you can buy prints of, a gorgeous landscape or whatever for anything from $10, $15 to whatever price you want to pay. But people pay for the photography. Carl charges as what he does because A, he can, and because he's Carl Johnson and you're buying that image. It's like, yeah, is anyone going to choose Google imagery over using an Ansel Adams photo?
Well, they could.
It depends on how much it costs to use it.
But that's my point though. That's my point though, is that like, I don't know, other than maybe Flickr, like somebody pulling a Creative Commons photo from Flickr, I don't know what this is damaging, other than maybe what people view as quality photography, which is always my worry overall. If people in general see and go, these aren't bad photos. But if you're a professional landscape photographer or a person who's done it even amateur level, you can look at these and go, wow, they're really technically terrible, especially once you know that they're HDR'd.
See, and I don't think that the clientele in which, as of right now, that they're even looking and marketing to for this is even going to be buying or even to look at buying Carl's photos. No offense, but to be honest with you, they're probably not. They're probably going to be finding the cheaper, less expensive, free option in which anybody else is going to go and do. And I think that's where the clientele, and I think that's where they're trying to build on that base market, and then basically have a firestorm, and it's just be the general name for everybody else going up and moving forward for a whole new generation.
Yeah.
I just want to say that Google is not selling these. These aren't like, they aren't flooding stock markets with stock photo sites with these images. It's really just an experiment to and see how it can do. And their goal is, what they say here, is to improve just general people's photographic capability, I guess. So you know, in that regard, I don't think it's going to compete with anything yet. But again, I see this sort of idea is that, you know, with 360 cameras getting higher and higher quality and cheaper, you know, you could go out to an event with like a 16K 360 camera and then, you know, either film it or have it do shots or whatever, and then you're just putting it in a location and then pulling the still frames out of that either automatically via AI or after the fact. You know, it's like, it's not taking, you know, you're not even worrying about where you're aiming the camera. That's sort of like, but again, you know, do you think that perhaps AI could be, you know, if not necessarily the photographer, could be the photo editor position for AI, or at least assisting photo editors in the future? Could this type of technology that, you know, if you train a computer to learn what makes a good photo, could they then populate, essentially you go in, you shoot an event, and your AI companion makes your selects for you, cutting down your workflow time? You think that is an idea, or is that completely pie in the sky?
See, but I feel like if you have somebody who knows what they're doing, editing a photo, it can be a world of difference of creating a random picture that's and making that picture to become a little bit better in the quality and what it is. I mean, the quality of the photo is what it's going to be, but the substance within that photo can be enhanced. But then you also run into the problems of, well, is that what it really is versus a doctored photo now?
Well, I think one of the things about whether or not, and I'll agree with you there, one of the things about whether or not this could replace an editor is, do you want paint by numbers editing, or do you want somebody who really understands the craft of visual imagery? And AI can never, ever, ever do that. They can extrapolate, and they can do all kinds of algorithms and things like that, and look at the numbers on what constitutes a processed photo by analyzing other images, but they don't have the intuitive ability to know what a photo really needs to make it good for the end audience, whether it's a print for sale or whether it's an image to go with an article. And there are some product, like back to those blog posts again, they don't care about quality images. They're just filler. So that's fine. That's gonna be the product for them. But when it comes to, you know, real quality images, original images that have thought and feeling and all those things that we look to for photography to evoke emotions and passions and whatever, AI just can't, at least from this example, can't reproduce that.
And I feel like it goes back to the basis of it. You still have a human processing the code for that AI to put it all together and tell it what it's really looking for. I mean, and that's what it goes back initially, essentially back to what it is.
I don't know if I can say necessarily that you'll never see AI that can do humans. I think it's really just a limitation of the current technology that we have right now. I mean, in learning, you know, it's basically showing a machine what makes a good photo. And yes, you know, right now it's rudimentary, it's basic, and it understand the intuitive nature of what makes, you know, art a great photo great. But that doesn't mean it's completely outside the realm of possibility. Craig?
Yeah, I was just going to go back to the point before about the early selects, or, you know, part of the editing process. I think the AI could possibly be used for the initial, you know, starring of your photos and getting out or getting rid of the rubbish. You know, the photo of your feet or something that's just very blurry. I'm not sure that AI would ever be able to edit a photo properly. I mean, every photo is going to be different. I mean, just looking at some of these here, there's nothing really there that is that appealing. it's just going to apply a bunch of rules, and the rules don't always apply to a photo. I mean, we'll pull out something from a landscape that typically or wouldn't often be the right crop, but for whatever reason it works in that situation. I mean, looking at some of these with the rivers or the lakes, the horizon's bang in the middle. That's like a rule, and that's not necessarily always going to be the best, most pleasing way of cropping a photo. So I don't know. It is machine learning. I think it's probably got quite some time to go before people who appreciate and understand landscape photography see it as a threat. I'm certainly not threatened by it at the moment. These are sort of, I wouldn't even call them average at best. They're good enough for free if that's all that you're chasing.
I would let Google pay me to use these photos. Sure.
Yeah.
I think I understand what you're saying, and yeah, I agree. The AI today and currently, can't handle what we do as photo editors, or I don't think really could, make selects for us. But I think to say ever is a bit, maybe not in our lifetimes. I'll put it that way. But I can definitely see
a long way away.
Where
it's a long way away. You'd have to think.
I'd say it's probably maybe 50 years away. But with the way that I think computers are advancing, I think it's definitely something. And I would actually, if there was a tool or a program that came out that I could install a machine that would, I take my card of like 1,000 images, I shoot some event, and it would, use AI to sort of pick my selects for me. If it got me like 90% of the way there, I'd say that is a worthwhile sort of thing. If it could predict what I would like, it would learn what I would like because it would examine how I make my selects. I mean, 80 or 90% of the way there, that's a time-saving measure, that I think people would actually want. And, I think a realistic way AI could be used in our lifetimes to help, I don't know.
So, so first off, like editors for the most part don't exist. So photo editors don't for the most part exist. So AI isn't taking away any jobs for the most part. There's no way that time, maybe Time Magazine is actually a bad example. But there's no way that whatever, I don't know, name a place that has a photo editor still, is going to replace it with that. They'll replace it with just a guy who doesn't know what to do. AI, though, has already started taking print journalist jobs. Reuters and AP employ AI to write a lot of their beat stories because all they have to do is input info into them, and then it produces a story. You literally go, it happens somewhere. You can Google search stories about it. Is that a lot of AP's basic wire feed stories are written by AI now, and have been for a while.
Well, let me ask you this, Zach.
Yeah.
You said that publications don't have editors, right? They don't have photo editors, right? Yeah. But someone is making a choice. Someone is making the selection of what photos.
The writer.
Okay, the writers, right? Okay, the writer isn't a photographer, right?
Most of the time, no. So here's the thing with AI. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Well, I'm just saying, like, wouldn't it be good though then if I have a company and I'm sending people out who don't know how to edit photos, who don't understand photo editing, who don't understand what makes a great photo? I could give them this AI companion, AI tool that has been trained by studying all the great photographs that exist, and then this novice, writer this writer who's never taken a photo in their life can now use the AI tool to tell me what the best photo is I should use.
Okay,
isn't that like a good thing?
If you go to most large news websites that are actually producing original text content, and look at the credits on the photos, I would say if you went to Huffington Post, that actually does have print reporters that actually do original stories, I would say that 90% of the photos are not original, that they are taken by wire photographers, who, what you're doing then is that you're just literally going into AP's database, you're going into Getty's, you're going into Nerve Photos, whatever, and typing in the event or typing in the like it's a story about Senator Dan Sullivan. So type in Dan Sullivan. Yeah, I know. Type in, make sure you put in Senator Dan Sullivan, not Mayor Dan Sullivan. And sorry, inside joke. And and making sure that it's him, and then poof, there it goes. I just sold. I sold probably last quarter. I sold, let's say, 100 photos, and through my wire. I didn't shoot. I only shot like 3 stories in the past quarter. So most of those photos are from events that happened during the campaign trail and are old photos. So most of the photo illustrations, which you can't even call, I don't know if you can call them news or general editorial, they're not having actually connected with the story. They're a photo provided, by the senator's office, photo provided by the White House, photo provided by, or they're a cheap wire service. So the reason that most sites don't have photo editors now is because they don't have photographers. And if they do have photographers, it's 9 times out of 10, it's the story writer, the person who's actually writing the story with their iPhone, or maybe they have a point and shoot. I mean, I can tell you, working for comicbook.com, and it's the 4th largest entertainment website on the internet. They don't have. I am the only photographer for the website, and they're going to San Diego Comic-Con right now, and they didn't bring me. So all the photos that you see on that site are not taken by that site. So they not only do they have no need for a photo editor, they don't even have a photographer. They may pull from video because everybody's shooting at 1080p. Rocky Mountain News back in 2005, 2004 got rid of. They gave every single before they went out of business, of course. They gave every single journalist a video camera. And what their job was to go, this is before, iPhones and everything like that. What their job was, as part of the story, was to videotape. And then what they realized is that 1080p or 1080, probably 1080i back then, is more than good enough, in quotes. Obviously, I'm talking to a room of photographers here. So more than good enough for print photography, for newspapers. I know, there's no need to argue that. I disagree with it, but it doesn't matter because most people, it's literally just, that's what the scene was. I mean, most news photography, I would bet, it literally is a grip and grin. I mean, you go through any local newspaper, I would bet that 80% of the photos that are original photos are literally 2 people shaking hands, a group shot of everybody looking at the camera, or whatever. I mean, that's just the way it is, because if you're covering a nursing home opening, what is the photo there? I mean, so for people who aren't photojournalists. So I don't know, obviously I've gone on a rant here, shock, but I don't know what AI is doing, other than what was basically possibly what AI could do is if I'm writing a story and they notice names, they notice Dan Sullivan, Lisa Murkowski, President Trump, and whatever. And then at the bottom of the story, if I was running a Huffington Post, what I would like to have is I'd like to have a feed at the bottom for my print journalists of appropriate photos that we have rights to already. I mean, that's what I literally do at all the sites that I write for. If I'm writing about somebody and I haven't literally gone to photograph it, I go through my database of photos that I've taken over the last 12 years and go, oh, I got a photo of President Trump. Flop. There you go. If it's just some random story about his Voting Rights Commission or something like that. And that's what most stories are. So, that's the unfortunate thing about our industry now is that, photographers aren't sent out to, I think 90% would be a general, a sadly low number, aren't sent out to 90% of the stories that are in the newspaper. They're either relying on a wire photographer or a guy's phone or nothing at all. And
social media.
Do it. Social media. Social media.
Facebook, Twitter,
yeah.
Instagram, and honestly, especially for TV news, it's hey, well, we got Instagram, we got video, or people post on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. Yeah. Oh, we got the little crappy cell phone video that's vertical of.
Go on journalismjobs.com right now and search multimedia journalist. And if you're not in the industry, you won't know what that term is if you're not a photographer. But it's a very blind thing. Basically what it is, it's what used to be an on-camera journalist holding an iPhone with a selfie stick doing on-scene reporting, walking backwards usually or something, you know, I mean, standing in a scene and doing her own or his own camera work, and getting paid a third of the job, third of the price of the videographer and the reporter used to be.
Oh, we have one here in Jersey.
Yeah.
That literally that's what they do. They've got one holding a cell phone facing facing them, and then they got another one on a selfie stick facing who they're interviewing and going back and forth, asking quote unquote the tough questions.
Well, I mean, you know, I mean, the thing is, you know, I think, you know, look, if you go to my Facebook feed, you go to all these places, the amount that I criticize news, oh my God, like I'm the worst person. But, you know, I mean, like,
do you talk about anything else?
No, I don't. That's my industry, you know. If I was
criticize my business, yeah.
But, you know, I mean, like, most stories don't need a lot of things, and you know, as journalism gets, you know, less and less of a profit, you know, any way of basically making money from it, I understand to an extent why these things are happening. But you know, it's sad that we need to start what I think is an industry, and I think I probably say this at least once almost every show, is that as an industry, as photojournalists, whether we're videographers or still photographers or whatever, we need to figure out a way to start making sure that people not only know the difference between the famous cover of I think it was the Chicago Sun-Times with the Stanley Cup photo, versus the Chicago Tribune. I might be mixing
World Series.
I thought it was the Stanley Cup. It was the World Series. Oh, they won this. Yeah, holding it up, and one had an iPhone photo, and the other had a professional photographer there on the scene. And the famous meme, if you Google search the meme, it's the two photos on the front covers, and you see the difference, and you're like, this is what a newspaper with a team of professional photographers got. And this is what happens when you lay off all your photographers. So that's what we need to figure out. You know? All right. Well, for those listening on audio, he just looked off and did a sarcastic face because that doesn't feed on for our audio listeners. So,
all right.
So you don't get that on the Facebook feed of going, what the hell? He doesn't see the difference.
The angry hate mail. I can see it coming now. All right.
I'd love to have some angry hate mail.
No more comments about AI. We're going to move on to our next topic, our main topic this week, and that is shooting on a boat. So, you know, our careers, our lives, what we do brings us into all kinds of different situations all the time, whether it's, you know, again, on every different type of medium and platform and place and location. I've shot on boats multiple times in my career, whether it be a large ship, like a battleship, or like a small little boat that's, you know, zooming over the water and bouncing up in the waves. And I've tried to, you know, shoot both those scenarios. But I want to get your guys' takes on this. You know, what are your experiences shooting on watercraft, and how do you sort of manage that, either by, you know, either one, trying to, you know, adjust your settings to accommodate for perhaps the rocky boat, or two, trying to find subject matter on such a tight and closed space where you have to tell a story and be creative. So why don't we start with you, Craig?
Okay, well, mine was my experience was for about 6 months working on the Brisbane River a few years ago. We have a couple of, believe it or not, Mississippi-style paddle steamers that are used for lunches and dinners and all that sort of stuff. It's you go up and down the river, see the sights, and generally have a good meal. And I was the photographer on board to take photos of people enjoying themselves, either at their table, which was a very enclosed brown wood and red carpet environment, low light, or out on deck, which I really, really enjoyed. For me, it was juggling between flash and ambient and trying to get a decent exposure, particularly early on. I think probably what I enjoyed most of it was the formals, the school formals and things like that, where people were there having a good time, or hens parties and things like that, where everybody's having a good time. So completely different to a battleship or a fishing trawler. But for me, it was, good fun. I enjoyed it for the most part.
Okay. All right.
A little bit different anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. How about you, Stephen? You are obviously on a boat all the time because you're Coast Guard work. So talk to us a little bit about your experiences.
So for me, I do both stills and video. So that makes it.
Oh, Zach, come on.
Yeah, go ahead, Zach. Go ahead. I know you have a comment.
Oh, about what? On the Coast Guard? No, I was just my experience doing video on a boat is not pleasant. So go ahead. That's why I was rolling my eyes.
So for me, one of my cameras that I have has a internal stabilizer that allows me to kind of cut the edge off of, especially when I'm going handheld, off of a lot of the rocking of the boat. So it allows me to get a steadier image, and it actually works fairly well. The other thing in which I'm looking at getting is they've become a lot cheaper for the stabilizers and the Steadicams, and getting everything that you need to done. So no matter how much you're rocking and everything else, it all is even out and even kill. The other thing that I really like, especially for video, and I really haven't tested it out too much out on water, but I've tested it out on my bike, is the Osmo. Have y'all seen that yet?
Mm.
So I have this Osmo.
Yeah, so you get the Osmo for your phone, and yet it works perfectly fine. And I've had it out on the bike, and that video came out beautifully. And I'm on the streets of New York, which is perfectly smooth. No bumps or anything like that. No potholes ever. You will never find any potholes in the streets of New York. So if you haven't got this, I have a really huge sarcastic.
We'll put a little ding afterwards for every time you're being sarcastic. So just
imagine everything he's saying is sarcastic, and then you're good. Just don't take anything seriously.
So even I down here know that the New York streets are terrible.
Yeah.
But coming off of that, but I think the one thing that really saves me on my boat, especially for videoing on my small camera, is my internal stabilizer in my camera that I have. And I was shooting a test drop on we were about a quarter mile away, and they were testing, and they were dropping probably like imagine something the size of a lawn dart off of the top of a bridge in the middle of a river. It was pretty choppy that day, and I'm catching everything perfectly fine.
Wow.
So it's knowing your equipment and knowing how it operates is probably by far the biggest thing that you can do, because going out there and just trying to test it out and it looks like crap, and that's what you're going to get if you don't know your equipment and how to use it, is probably the biggest thing.
You'll end up with AI images.
No, those actually those look somewhat okay. You'll still they'll be grip and grins.
Carl, please tell us about your boat experience.
Well, shooting on a boat, so to speak, is how I got started. When I was in the Navy, I was a ship's photographer for 2 commands, and shooting everything from calm waters and launching Tomahawk missiles to underway replenishment and 20-foot swells in the Sea of Japan. So there's a lot of different things you have to deal with there. For my Bristol Bay book, I spent a lot of time on 30, 35-foot long commercial fishing boats. And I also do a lot of wildlife photography that's boat-based. So one of the things that you have to deal with is your own personal safety. In a lot of cases, you're dealing with waves and swells that are pretty rough, and if you're not paying attention, you could slam your head into something or go overboard. So I always maintain 3 points of contact. Like, for example, on a commercial fishing boat, if I'm photographing the crew on the bow as they're casting out a net or hauling it in heavy seas, I'll get up on, there's a little ladder that goes up to where the skipper sits, where you can keep an eye on everything. And I'll actually have both feet on the ladder, and I'll hook one elbow in the ladder, and I'm just shooting one-handed with the other hand. I have all my settings ready to go, so the only thing I have to do is just compose and shoot. Or if I'm on a boat photographing wildlife and it's kind of rough swells like I was in just over the weekend, again, 3 points of contact. What I'll often do is I'll plant 2 feet on the deck, and then I'll lean like into the gunnel or something like that. So I'm kind of bracing myself so I can control what my body is doing, and then that gives me a chance to, photograph on, focus on the wildlife. Settings are definitely a big thing. Just get your settings done before you start shooting. Check them occasionally to make sure you're getting the exposure you want. But the less you do while you're in the process, the better, because then you can kind of balance out that personal safety and the photography. High shutter speeds, ISO 400, never anything less than that for me. And one of the things I add on when I'm doing wildlife photography, which often involves long lenses, like the shortest lens I'll often use is my 200 or 400. And that is, I have a custom mount that I had built on a rifle stock. And so I used my quick release plate to attach to the top of the rifle stock. And then I have my cable release. I have a remote trigger that's actually down at the trigger housing where you would have on a rifle. So I can brace the butt of the rifle into my shoulder, and then I could just use that, and it adds an extra bit of stability that helps to, kind of balance out all of the movement and everything else that's going on with the water, with the boat. So it's kind of a lot of personal safety awareness of your surroundings, in addition to all the stuff you have to think of when you're taking photos.
Carl, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So for when you're shooting, do you have also a safety harness or something attached for your camera to where it's a safety mechanism just in case something happens and you hit a wave and it slipped?
Well, I'm always shooting with my camera strap is around my neck. When I see people out on a boat who are just holding their camera out and they don't have their strap engaged, it's like, dude, put your strap around your neck. That's one little extra bit of protection. Also, forgot to mention, there's a lot of stuff I do to protect my gear. I'll put rain gear on the camera because in addition to the water and the spray, some of the messiest photography I've ever done was covering the Togiak herring fishery in the Bristol Bay region, where in addition to water getting on your camera and your lens, you also have herring blood, herring sperm, herring eggs flying all over the place. And it was 2 weeks later, I was still picking herring eggs out of parts of my camera gear. So,
anybody hungry yet? By the way,
yeah, right.
Sushi, anybody?
Yeah, lunchtime soon.
Salmon
show on the internet. You're going to hear about herring spur.
Herring spur.
There's the title of the episode.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I can envision, while I don't do it, I mean, the camera strap I've always found is enough protection to keep the camera from flying away. Because then if the camera is going overboard, that means I'm going overboard and I have bigger concerns than the camera. But I could see you have, some camera harnesses. There's a chest strap system where you can hook in the camera, the lens into the chest strap. I could see modifying something like that, and then just adding a hook between that and the camera strap on the camera, so you have that extra tether, kind of a third point of contact for your camera as well as for yourself. So that would be just a quick and easy add to add a little bit of extra protection.
See, my other thing that, especially when I'm shooting with my still camera, so I take my strap on, and especially for those when I'm having to reach out and get those across the bow and coming in shots. It's like I've got it wrapped around my arm, and as another point of contact. So if it slips out of my hand, it's attached to my arm. It's not going anywhere.
Yep.
Zach?
Yeah, my big I'm mostly land based, but I did actually covered going out to in the Prince William Sound to as they call it Diesel Beach, back in where you can still find oil from the Exxon Valdez spill. Was it? I don't even know how many years now.
1989.
1989. Yep. I was trying to add that up in my head, how many years, and I was just like, I don't. too long that you still can find it. But I basically everything that Carl said. I mean, basically, if you're gonna be outside of a boat, especially if it's not like if it's a cruise ship, whatever, But if you're in an actual fishing boat or something like that, basically treat it like you're going to be in a rainstorm. because that's what you are going to be. We were on a fishing boat that was going, I don't know how fast, but seemed like it was pretty fast. And I, thankfully I had back then, I had my the D7000, which was surprisingly a well-built camera for a consumer model, and I had my Tokina 11 to, I think it's the 11 to 17, which if I supposedly that doesn't have a weather seal, but holy crap. Like that lens, if you're shooting with a crop sensor, you can still get it for super cheap. It is the best wide angle lens you can buy, especially for the money in the world. But because that lens, I didn't have a filter. I had a rain bag, but those only work so well, especially the disposable, cheaper ones from like Optech or whatever. But I was basically wholly unprepared to cover it because I was mainly covering the when we were on the beach, and then I realized, oh my God, we're spending like three or 4 hours or more than that probably each way going to the beach and then back, and then there's puffins, and there was well, they're not dolphins. What are they? Porpoises running alongside other boats and everything like that. So it was absolutely amazing. But basically treat your camera like it's going to be in a rainstorm, and just keep it that way, because you never know. On a flat day, even on a a non-wavy day, you're going to have a lot of water kicking up. But I mean, like there's a pretty good chop, as they say. It's my one sailor term. And we had a lot of water coming up, and of course I'm trying to get all the shots I possibly can, and my video camera was shockingly made it through, let's just say that, with the amount of water and everything like that got around it, especially once afterwards when I went to Chiwitna like a month later, and then it got doused in dirt because I was hanging it off the side of a four-wheeler because I'm an idiot. But gaffer's tape and tape like that, cover up all the seals, and then from there, just take as many photos as possible to try to figure out what the settings are. We had a lot of cloud cover and light changes as we went out there, so my settings basically went from late afternoon to daytime, but yeah.
The most memorable experiences I can remember having on boats, one time I was shooting the Air National Guard as they were doing an exercise, and I was on a boat that was rocking and bouncing up and forth because you had people on jet skis who were like zooming around it, and then you had people in the sky via parachute into the water, and they were being picked up by a helicopter. So my task, or my goal, was to shoot the helicopter, picking up the folks, from the water, while I was on a boat that was rocking and bouncing back up and forth. But when shooting the helicopter, I wanted to make sure I had motion in the blades. So I was trying to shoot at a slow enough shutter speed to get the motion in the blades, but also, counteract the fact that I was bouncing up and down while also getting sprayed in the face by all the sea spray. But I ended up getting decent photos from it. I got nice, tack sharp quality photos, and I had to shoot on super high continuous shutter speed, or continuous shot. And then I picked the one shot in there that was in focus. But it was a fun experience. The other time I was on a boat, I was on a large aircraft carrier for only a few days, and I know with those type of you're looking for shots to get. Maybe Carl, you could talk a little about this. Since you were in the Navy, when you're on boat for a long time, what are you looking for to kind of gin up some diversity in your imagery? You got this. You only got so many places you can go.
Well, I mean, it depends on how big of a ship you're on. I served on smaller ships. I served on a Spruance class destroyer, and I served on a Sirabachi class ammunition supply ship. So you're talking a crew of less than 300, and roughly 300 plus length in vessel length. But when you're photographing a world that's completely foreign to a lot of people, shipboard life, pretty much everything you photograph is new to your potential audience. And so even stuff that might be incredibly mundane to you, and I mean, think still lifes, little details of anything from brass fittings on fire hoses to, you know, the details on the hatch, details on the deck, details on weaponry, and then shipboard life, guys playing cards in the evening, doing drills for firefighting drills, you know, guys dressed up in their full chemical biological warfare outfits that they have to wear when you're doing general quarters drills. And that's just the normal stuff. And then you're also doing, you know, full-on major conflag, you know, warfare simulation drills where there's all kinds of weaponry and equipment and gear and all kinds of stuff going on. My destroyer was on. I was photographing us firing Tomahawk missiles, Sea Sparrow missiles, firing the failing Sea Whiz, you know, 20 millimeter weapon system, pictures in ports of call. So there really is an endless supply of material, because you're documenting the ship, but the potential audience is really large, and the potential audience has no idea of the world you're photographing.
I was about to echo Carl. I mean, just imagine how much of a personalized effort that we put into our day-to-day photography on land, and it's the same principle on a ship. You want to get that personal of daily life of the sailors on that ship. So that day-to-day personal feel and effect. I mean, just the excitement of the kids on the Eagle coming into New York, or just to see the excitement in their eyes looking into New York City. It's all still the same feel, and every drill, every movement that you do on a ship is basically the same principle of that you're doing it on land. It's just you're on a boat.
Okay.
And there's endless. I mean, there's endless potential for stock imagery too. Like if you're photographing, whether it's military, you know, Coast Guard, whatever. I did an assignment for the Navy back in 2008 where I rode the USS Peleliu which is a helicopter carrier, amphibious helicopter carrier, from San Diego to Pearl Harbor. My primary mission was to do crew portraits, do a headshot portrait of everybody on the crew in those 5 days for them to use in their cruise book. But I shot tons of stock footage from flight operations to us coming in dress whites into port in Pearl Harbor and rendering honors at the USS Arizona Memorial, and tons of stuff that, you know, 9 years later I'm still making stock sales from, because the imagery is timeless. The imagery of military and operations and uniforms and kind of the protocol and the you know, the ceremony of military is timeless. So lots of opportunity, but also to photograph, but also on the back end, lots of opportunity to use those images.
Yeah. Now, Craig, did you say you shot on a cruise ship?
It was no. It was a very small, like a Mississippi-style paddle steamer that we have here in Brisbane on the river. We've got two of them. They were built for like a big expo, Australia Expo, back in 1988, and they still have stuck around, and they go up and down the river. But sorry, I was just going back to the mundane life on board. For whatever reason, it just popped into my head. I've got photos of years ago when I used to work on oil rigs in offshore situation, and in particular in India, where before we would spud the well, before we could start drilling, they would fly on board. I don't want to say a witch doctor, that's the wrong term, but like a local to be able to bless the well. And they would actually get everybody involved, sitting around the rig floor. They would light a fire. They would slaughter a chicken or something like that. And I would take photos of that with typically a phone. So these are going back a few years, so that I could send them back to my wife and kids and say, look, this is my mundane life. This is a little bit of what I'm doing. And typically we were restricted to only photographing from the heli deck. It's not allowed to walk around with a camera. It's potentially a spark device. So particularly when we're drilling, there's hydrocarbons. So everything's restricted unless you've got a hot work permit. So I've got, every now and then it pops up in my, in an old folder, another photo of cranes or another photo of the pipe deck or occasionally a semi-decent sunset. Yeah, sorry, just a thought that popped into my head.
Shot on an oil rig and you only used your phone because you couldn't use like an SLR with a camera with a shutter, right?
Yeah, back then I didn't have a DSLR, so I had little point and shoots, or I'd have just my phone. I think in India I was working there in the very early thousands, 2003, 2004. And quite often we were limited with what we could take offshore. It used to be the case where you'd have to actually leave your phone behind because, again, it emitted a signal. In India, one particular customer, you had to hand in all electronics. So you're allowed to take out your laptop, but they wanted to inspect your, at this stage, floppy disks, if required, when you came back in, just in case you were recording or copying information that was vital to the well. So I remember having a very early MP3 player and a camera and a few other bits and pieces that I would take offshore to keep me sane, because quite often I would be the only Westerner on a rig. And next thing, and I've got none of my comfort zone tools. I didn't have a camera to play with. I didn't have music to listen to. And it was always the worry of, is it going to be there when I get back? Are they going to steal my stuff? So I always got my stuff back. So good times.
Right.
But going back to the paddle boats, my job was to walk around and take photos of people who wanted to have their photo taken. The odd wedding proposal, the hens nights, the school formals, which were good fun, and then try and print them and see who wanted to buy those prints. So I took a lot more photos than I sold prints, I must admit.
Did you say hens night?
Hens nights, yeah. So I think the equivalent would be a bachelorette party.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, okay.
Hens night.
Sorry, we call that a hens night, yeah.
So you printed out the photos you shot, and then whoever bought them. What did you do with the leftover prints?
They got put in a box and given to the office, and they could do with them as they pleased. But I was on board.
Plastered their walls with those photos. Just used as wallpaper.
Yes.
Built their shrine.
And look, some of them I use on my website from the like the school formals, because you'd have the Brisbane city lights, the buildings all lit up,
right?
And kids that are well dressed, having a good time, who wanted to have their photos taken. So some of my favorite photos are still from working on the boats, on those paddle boats.
Absolutely. All right. Well, if there's no more talk about Steven,
I've got one more thing to add, and I'll be
not taking you seriously though.
I'll be remiss, and I'll be laughed at by anybody in the Coast Guard if I don't mention the fact that you need to have your PFD while you're on the boat. Wear your PFDs. Plug. Wear your PFDs. Okay.
For the non-military audience, what does PFD stand for?
Personal flotation device.
Everybody join in.
And actually, it's not just PFDs, but any appropriate PPE for the occasion. And that would be personal protective equipment. I once did a shot for an oil company up in the Chukchi Sea where they had me wear a full Mustang suit. So whatever the job requires for PPE, you got to wear it.
That's right.
I love when the Navy switched to the blue camouflage uniforms, because I was like, that's perfect. You fall in the water, you're camouflaged with the water. Idea?
Don't get me started. Those are so lame.
There was a rumor that they would turn orange when you fell into seawater, but
aren't they switching back now after like a $30 million or some massive expensive?
Well, I think what they're trying to do is military-wide. The DoD is trying to go to one single uniform for all the services, like in the old days.
Well, the orange works. The orange, either the life, your PFD or the overalls work. One particular rig I used to work on, every few weeks we would do, every Sunday was muster drills. But part of that was they would always do occasionally a man overboard drill. And so they had a set of overalls that was stuffed with life jackets, had a hard hat and all that sort of stuff. And they would throw it over, and then people would have to yell out, man overboard, it's a drill. that launched the fast rescue craft to go and pick up this floating overalls. But we had to stop because before we could even launch the boat, the sharks would be attacking the overalls. Oh my God. So, yeah. So it was better for morale not to practice.
So I'm guessing Carl and Steve, not so much a problem where you guys were.
No.
So I mean, wouldn't that make the drill a lot easier though? I mean, man overboard would be like, well, good knowing them.
Pretty much, yeah. And I do have it's somewhere in my archive somewhere. We were doing a well test, so we'd actually be flowing the well and what have you, and flaring it off. But leading up to it, they were doing some acoustic soundings just to figure out where the reservoirs were. And we were working on Northwest Shelf near Exmouth, known as the Humpback Highway. It's part of the migration trail for the humpback whales. And so when you were walking around deck, you were always looking for whales. We were supposed to report it so they could keep an eye on it. And we had a whale come right up to the rig and actually scratch his back on one of the hulls of the two pontoons of the rig. And I was looking straight down with the company man, I think it was for Santos. And he and I all operations had been stopped because the whale was now within, the vicinity of the rig. And here's this thing just going straight across and just scratching himself. Absolutely amazing. And I think I had a little Fujifilm 2800 zoom or something like that to take the photos with.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go and move on to our last topic this evening, talking about gear as always. This week we're going to talk about flash units. So not necessarily the flash you put on your hot shoe, but more like the flashes you'd have in your studio-based flashes. We're talking about this because Bowens, a company that has been making flashes for seems like forever, is pretty much going out of business. They're liquidating their business and their products and stuff, and they're probably gonna not be around much longer. I don't use Bowen flashes myself. My flashes are this kind of, I don't know if that's a good brand or whatnot, but I got them cheap. All I cared about was, price at the time when I bought them. But, I know Bowen makes really good high professional stuff. I've used their stuff in the past. Definitely good stuff. So, this got me thinking, like, what have you all been experienced, either using Bowen gear or using any, high-end studio style flashes? And what do you look for if you are, buying this type of gear?
Does anybody shoot this?
Does anybody have any money to buy the studio lights after buying gear?
How about used studio gear just in your career?
Yeah. I mean, I at one point in time in my life, I was doing commercial work. Actually, some of my first paid work was in portrait photography. And then when I started my own business, I was doing portraits and weddings and commercial work for some time. I always looked for studio strobes that were very variable in their settings and gave me a lot of flexibility and control in going from just very minimal lighting to extreme lighting. Like if you're shooting an outdoor wedding and the couple in their infinite wisdom decides to set up their altar so it's directly in front of the setting sun or the late afternoon sun, and the sun's right behind them, you need 600 watts on a remote trigger in order to overcome that bright sunlight. So that for me was really the biggest, and I never really cared for brand names as long as it gave me the flexibility I needed and the type of remote trigger that I needed. That was really, what I look for. And, something that was an easy system that I could pack up and set up really easily without a lot of heartache, and not a bunch of, I started with the whole business where you had to have cables running through, junction boxes and all that kind of stuff, and fuses and all the, no. When it came time for me to buy my own gear, I wanted it light, I wanted it variable, and I wanted it easy. And, if it got windy, then I just, stake my strobes in, my stands into the ground. So, yeah, that's what I look for. And I was always looking for something that could give me opportunities for anywhere from even lighting, depending on what the customer wanted, to really dramatic accent lighting.
All right.
See,
Craig, you use any of those studio lights on the boat?
Not on the boat, no. I just had on-camera flash, and I used a light sphere just to try and soften it a little bit. Particularly working indoors, where you've just got a very brown environment. A little bit of light really helped, particularly at night. I have used studio lights. I think I did a few years ago look at a Bowens setup, but I didn't pull the trigger on buying anything. If anything, I was going to go Elinchrom, but just decided on a lens rather than a set of lights. 70 to 200 from memory.
Yeah. Steven, you mess with any lights inside the photo studios?
yeah, no,
The Coast Guard? No.
no.
right.
I got one light, and it's pretty much a permanent light that it's mine. So, but for me, I mainly dabble in video. Most of my still photography is outside, and I really don't need a flash.
Yeah.
What about, okay, so for video, what about like LEDs, or what kind of lights do you use to light in dark environments when you're shooting video?
So it depends on what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to get accomplished, versus how much lighting and which I need to bring. Because shooting in the dark I need a crap tons of light.
Yeah.
That's an imperial unit, is it, or metric?
That's
Crap ton. It's a CT.
We're metric down here, right?
See,
CT radio.
I was about to say that's a universal.
Gotcha.
But honestly, I just set up what I can afford, basically. And honestly, like everything else, I mean, if you know how to use lights and how to actually know how to do lighting, it doesn't. For me, I feel like it doesn't matter what I have versus being able to use it properly.
Okay. What have you used to light up an environment?
Oh, so I got Lowell's, or I got the baby LEDs. Now I think everybody's starting to move over to LEDs because they're becoming extremely cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Compactable, and whereas like you have a 1,000-watt HMI light that takes up a case that will probably. It's 30 pounds and is big and bulky to carry around. But granted, it'll light up forever and a day. But I mean, who has the time to set it up and to light the world with that thing? But where you can have a couple LEDs, strategically place them, and you can have the same effect. So
yeah.
Okay.
I've got a couple of small LED panels that I use occasionally for real estate photography, but like I've got one at the moment just in a corner just to give me a little bit of light, possibly a little bit too much. But I think LEDs, they're cheaper, don't produce any heat, and very, very portable. Yeah,
I actually used an LED panel that is normally I mount onto my hot shoe to give me video light. I actually used that for a photo shoot one time because I believe my flash was dead, and it actually worked out pretty well. I could light the environment. It was neat as, you saw exactly how the light reacted to the subject matter. So in real time by, shooting a photo, checking it out, seeing how the flash looked. So I liked it. I think LEDs are great. And then with the flash system I have back there with the impact, I mean, that's really just in my house, studio lights. I've been trying to move towards a portable flash setup using actually Young Nuo lights and a wireless transmitter. So I have a wireless transmitter and I have one of the flashes. So I get like another 2 flashes and, umbrellas, and bada bing, I got a portable studio package right there. So I think that's great. Zach, any thoughts from you on studio lights in your life?
I haven't shot in
very often.
Studio since third year in college. So 2002. But I did finally, of course, it's in my car. I did finally buy one of those collapsible oh my God, what is it even called? Basically a little softbox, portable softbox for my SB900, which is the only thing I tried. I need to learn how to use that because I've just never had, I've never really had the need to, because, you know, when you're, you know, most of the work I do, I'm not going to be running around with a flash, you know, shooting, you know, protests and stuff like that. So it's just about low light. I mean, for video, I just, what, 2 years ago, I had one of the, just a little small LED light. Works great. Basically, yeah, very similar to that. I think I have a much cheaper version.
This is you can't get any cheaper than this. This is about $20.
Oh, really?
And it works. It fits in my bag.
I think that's the same one I have.
And I've got like 3 of them. They fit in my bag, and they work.
Yeah.
I
agree.
I love them. I in fact, yeah, like you, I've used them for a lot of portrait, especially like I'll bring it along if I know, like, you know, whether it be an Occupy type situation where people are not going to be moving around a lot, and I can actually bring something more than just a shoulder bag or just, you know, another lens bag. I'll bring the light along just to, you know, give a soft illumination so that I can actually shoot something with, you know, at 1.4 and not have like a, you know, not bump my ISO through the roof. But no, I'm gonna be shooting a lot more video now, and I try to shoot it without, you know, in DSLR it's pretty nice to shoot. You can pretty much shoot in almost any situation without lights. You know, you can maybe just like put a lamp or something like that somewhere and kind of get enough light. But you know, I have a video camera, and you need a heck of a lot more light. So I need to I've been actually looking at what the cost, you know, front is for buying some light panels. And
Zach, I was about to say, so when I'm shooting, I've got a little arm that I attached to the top of my camera. I pop this little this right on and have my front light. And like if I'm doing interviews, or it gives enough light if you're about 8 feet out to cover everything that you need.
Yeah, I actually was going to either write up something about this site later, but now I can mention it. If you go on YouTube, because I was trying to find.
I haven't heard of that site before.
I was going to say, how do you spell that?
Yeah. It's possibly where we all are right now.
Is that something new?
Capital U-TOOB.
Just read between the lines, everybody.
Is that the same as this lines, or?
It's a really heavy video episode. So if you're listening, if you want to go over to this newfangled website, YouTube. I don't know. I just learned about it personally.
Won't last bad. Video on the internet. Come on.
That's right. Video.
Internet.
Newly fanged website. What?
You mean they have
Vampires.
Are they starting TV now?
Still photos with a audio undertrack. That's gonna take off.
Yeah. Okay. Is everybody done?
No.
Wait. Yes, I'm done. Okay.
The channel on YouTube. I'm sorry, guys. I should have been more specific when I mentioned it first. DSLR video shooter. If you just go on YouTube.com and search it, I'm sure it'll come up. We'll put a link in the show notes.
I heard you can search it on this new site. I heard Google.com. Have you guys heard of Google?
Now is
that like
YouTube? Is YouTube in the series of tubes?
I still use dogpile.com,
Okay.
so, or maybe Alta Vista if I'm going really crazy.
Ask Jeeves. It's all about Ask Jeeves.
Man, I miss Alta Vista. Anyway.
Alta Vista was my first search engine, by the way.
Alta Vista was so much
Right
better
there.
than Google. Oh my God.
Loved Alta Vista.
Hey, is it on MySpace?
You could date search on Alta Vista. You could be like, I want this article between 2002 and 2004, and it would come up. It was amazing. Anyway, DSLR video shooter. They have a ton of really simple light tutorials for video. And the great thing is that unlike most of them you go to, and they're like, well, you just have this, you know, light panel, LITE panel set up because that's the brand name. You know, it's a $2,000 light here, $2,000 light here, whatever. No, they literally have a $100 light setup, $150, a $250 setup, and then they literally give you Amazon or Adorama links to where to buy the lights and give you the set step by step, and then they light it by that way. Like then he shows you video, and here's how it would look. And for a person who has always been, since I started photography back, you know, even vaguely professionally, at least as a student, back in like 2000, 17 years for me, half of my life ago now, dear Lord. I've always been crap on video, crap on lighting. I've never known how to use a flash. I very rarely even have like a flash ever with me, or even owned one until recently. I just broke down and bought it SB900 like a year or two ago. This site has been one of the most simple and easy to use for video that I found. And the fact that it actually tells you specifically with links the cheap way to do things, and then gives you kind of different levels, absolutely amazing when it comes to lighting. I know we're completely off track on talking about Bowens. I personally have never used Bowens. I haven't heard like a lot of good things about them when I've worked at camera stores. But you know, the problem is when you work at a camera store, if you talk to the lighting guy, you know, B&H, like they're snobs, you know, so it's really hard to talk to me like, well, I use the, you know, $2,500, you know, just standard light for on camera shooting, and then it goes up from there. So Bowens usually wasn't really in the conversation, but you know, if you can find them cheap, I guess get them.
Yeah, I tried to have a conversation with the B&H guy about the lighting kit that I bought, the impact kit, because I bought it because it was under $1,000.
I probably laughed at you then because you bought a B&H brand thing. So,
well, he was trying to like, you know, say like, oh, the light power output isn't consistent on each individual shot. And I'm like,
yeah.
Does it turn on?
No, the light, I will tell you, almost everybody at B&H is really, really great. You know, since I know a lot of the guys that still work there. But the lighting guys, they're great, but they're super duper snobs. So if you try to talk to, I don't even walk into the lighting department and say, hey, I have $200. What can I get? Because they would just laugh at me. They'd be like, here's a cable, you know? But yeah, but I recommend checking out DSLR Video Shooter. They're really fantastic explaining what you should buy. And also if you're a DSLR video shooter or getting into it, you know, I've just recently, I think 2 days ago, found this channel on YouTube. And they really explain things really, really well when it comes to everything. So
cool. Hey, Zach,
I wonder if there's a no, go ahead. What's that?
Yeah. Zach, offline later on, I can actually give you a tutorial on actually how to do lighting. This newfound thing called lighting. You start off with 3-point lighting, and
it will go in here, and it will go out the other. I used to go to Studio Purchase Film School back when we were shooting on 16mm film, and I took an entire semester-long course on lighting. Don't remember any of it at all. I mean, obviously LEDs didn't exist back then, so or at least in any way that anybody was using them, especially at a low-budget, you know, film school. Then I took them again at Syracuse University art photo. Went in one ear, went out the other. I just hate lighting. I hate using lighting because it's not, as a photojournalist, I have a very Lars von Trier level thing where I just go, it should look exactly what the scene is at the place that you shoot it. Yeah, so I've never learned it and I don't want to learn it, but I'm just going to literally figure out a setup for a documentary I'm working on because I have to. And then that's what I'm going to use for everything.
So I hope BA's not listening because he probably disown you.
Oh no, believe me, we've had this conversation. So I give CS a lot of crap because he goes to like Comic-Con with a strobe setup.
He's out in the field with like.
Yeah. Well, no, I yelled at him. I'm like, you're not covering what Comic-Con looks like. It's not photojournalism. So I'm sorry, when you bring a whole lighting setup and bring a person out of a news event that you're covering and put them in basically a miniature studio setup, I'm sorry, it stops being photojournalism. at all.
I disagree.
So it'll be an age-long discussion. Maybe we can do an entire show about it someday and get BA and CS and everybody can gang up on me. But the moment you take a person out of the scene at which it's happening, it stops being photojournalism, it stops being news, and it's a studio setup, and it's a portrait, maybe. Like maybe it's editorial. Like,
so when news people interview somebody at a news event, they are stopping to be journalists because they're no longer actively in the news event. They are setting them aside and creating this artificial environment.
If you're literally pulling a person out of a news event and bringing them all the way over there, well, no, that stops being, to me, it's a sit down it's basically a stand up, sit down, whatever interview. It's not photojournalism, like immediate photojournalism, news journalism.
Oh, okay.
It's an interview. Like there's different levels and differentiation.
No. So if I'm pulling somebody out of a crowd,
yes,
to be able to do an interview, so I can actually.
Okay, first off, I'm talking about still photography here. I'm not talking about interviews when I made my first statement. But if we want to go down this road, I'm down. I got nothing to do tonight.
Your first statement also had.
We got to end the show at some point, guys.
All right, you can just leave, and we'll just leave a spot. I'm down. This is like a dogma level thing for me. That if you pull for a still photo, and if you're covering a news event, not as an editorial thing, not as a stock thing, but if you're covering a news event, if you take a person that say, we'll use it, out of a protest, and remove them, put them up against a wall, and set up lights and take a photo of them, that's not photojournalism. It is a portrait. It is, it's not a portrait. You're not covering. That's not the news story, though. Just because you're taking them out of the element at which it's happening, and then literally using false light, you're taking them out of this place that they are. That is the news story itself. Like saying,
okay, we can keep going on this. This is a whole entire.
We will return to this story.
Let's save that topic for another show.
I still can't get past the notion that Comic-Con's a news event. I'm still my brain is kind of.
It's entertainment.
What about it? It's like it's usually the number one thing that makes me money for when it covering. So it is a news event.
Hey, new stuff comes out. I think that makes it news, right?
But it's entertainment news. It's entertainment news. You can put a little caveat in if you want to, but
yeah.
It's what pays my bills a lot of times. So.
All right, well, let's close up this week's show. We've had a fun conversation. Lots of
Bowens
fun
talk.
Hey, we learned something new. This thing called YouTube.
YouTube, yeah.
YouTube.
This is
you can watch this show on YouTube. I just now discovered this show is on YouTube. Wow. Anyways, I want to thank our panelists for coming on the show. Panelists, is there anything you guys want to plug, either your own stuff or somebody else's stuff? Carl, anything
YouTube.
I swear to God, I'll punch you in the face. I will fly to wherever you are.
Brisbane. It's only 15 hours from San Francisco.
I am on Hipmunk right now looking for flights.
I'll give you my address offline.
All right.
Anyway,
you want to plug anything besides YouTube?
Yeah, I guess I'll plug myself. Website is stampfli.photography. Sorry? Oh, is that Zach? Yes.
You there, man. Phrasing.
Say it again. I was making fun of you.
Phrasing? Okay. Oh, radio. Okay. Yeah, stampfli.photography. I think on Instagram, I'm craig.stampfli, and I think the same on Facebook.
All right. Carl?
Well, you already heard my URL. I can repeat it again. It's arclight-ak.com. But what I want to plug right now is actually an issue near and dear to my heart, and that is under the previous administration, the EPA had proposed protections for the Bristol Bay watershed from large upland hard rock mining. The current administration is planning to rescind all of those protections. And so if you want to learn more about that, you can actually get my book about the Bristol Bay region, where water is gold, life and livelihood in Alaska's Bristol Bay. And look to my website, because I'm soon to be doing a very detailed blog post about this particular issue and what people can do to provide a comment to the EPA about it. during the current 90-day public comment period.
All right, great.
Is there still an EPA in the US? I thought that got closed down.
In name only.
Right.
Actually, they renamed it to the Environmental Pollution Agency.
Yeah.
Gotta get rid of those regulations.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, Steven?
I want everybody to go to this website I just created, teachzachlighting.com. You can make your contribution donations on and tips to show him what real lighting is like.
Run by AI?
Run by AI. Bowens, if you want to donate any lights, we'll be glad to accept them.
Sure, they're liquidating their assets. I'm sure they'll throw you a couple. All right.
They'll be put to good use.
Absolutely. All right. Well, for Zach Roberts, I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 83. Please like, subscribe, follow, share, and tell every single person you know about the show. Really need those things. Also, rate us on YouTube and iTunes, and really need those ratings to stand out from the crowd. You know, there's like 300,000 podcasts out there. So if you want people to listen to this show, you got to rate us. Anyways, that's been Around the Lens 83. I am David J. Murphy, and we are out.